All right, welcome into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. I am Mike Kadlick from CLNS, joined as always by Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub. Alex, happy deadline to you and happy deadline day to you and yours.
Happy
And
deadline.
happy NFL trade deadline to all those who celebrate. It was a jam-packed NFL trade deadline today. 10 trades on deadline day, the most in NFL history, I'm pretty sure. So me and Alex are going to break a bunch of those down today, a bunch of those trades that happened, take a look at how they might affect the Patriots. We're also going to touch a little bit on Patriots Jets. We mostly broke that down on Sunday here on Patriots Press Pass after the game, but now that we have decompressed for 2 days, took a look at a little bit of the film and sort of where this team stands, we'll get into that and break that down a little bit further. And then we'll finally wrap this thing up with two of our favorite segments here on Patriots Beat, a Boston Sports Minute, talking about the Brooklyn Nets firing Steve Nash and potentially hiring Ime Udoka. And the College Football Playoff Committee unveiled their first top 25 of the season. So we'll take a look at that as well in a College Football Minute. But first, the Patriots did not make any deadline moves today, but they did make several transactions. They made 4 practice squad moves. They signed Hayden Howerton, inside interior offensive lineman. They also signed a punter, Michael Palardy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been around. I think he's on the older
Yeah.
end. And then they released Rondell Carter and they released Tristan Vizcaino once again. So any initial thoughts on that? The one thing that stands out is, to me anyway, is bolstering the interior offensive line after a brutal game on Sunday, and then bringing in Palardy to potentially help out Jake Bailey, who improved on Sunday for what it's worth, but who's kind of struggled this season.
Yeah, kind of same thoughts. They needed another lineman. They had another lineman, and they kind of followed through on the reports from last week that they were going to add a punter, even though Jake Bailey looked good on Sunday. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, that's our Patriots transactions. We got to break them all down. But the NFL trade deadline today was pretty insane. Probably the number one story, which could affect the Patriots in multiple ways, is Bradley Chubb. I think that was the big one. From Denver, was traded from the Dolphins, or to the Dolphins, excuse me, for Chase Edmonds, a 2023 first-round pick that they had gotten back in the Trey Lance deal. A 24 fourth-round pick as well, and then Chubb was sent with a 25 pick. So they traded Edmonds, and then they also traded back for Jeff Wilson from the San Francisco 49ers. So 2 big moves from the Dolphins today. Bradley Chubb will seemingly be paired up with Jalen Phillips. They'll try and get after the quarterback there in Miami, which could definitely impact the Patriots as well moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of shows you this trend that when teams get to year 3 of a quarter, like the third year of a quarterback's rookie deal, if they really believe in the guy, that's when they push all the chips in. I know some people wanted the Patriots to do that today. I noticed that's a lot of the same people complaining about the team not really having a quarterback. Those two things kind of don't go hand in hand. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't go throwing assets away because you need to add a quarterback. So pick one argument. Either Mac Jones is good enough and the Patriots should have invested to add around him, or they don't have a quarterback. I think he's good enough eventually, but this year is kind of a mess. And I'm fine with the Patriots standing pat because they're not in a spot like the Miami Dolphins are. You know, they haven't made that Tyreek Hill type addition yet. Hopefully that comes soon. That's kind of the next step for a young quarterback. I talked about last night with Joe Burrow and what he looked like without Jamar Chase. But yeah, for Miami, man, they're really going all in. And I think it's interesting if you look at, they had that 3rd overall pick. They traded it to San Francisco for 3 first-round picks. And they've now turned those into Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Bradley Chubb. I mean, that's just excellent. That's a fantastic job.
Outstanding asset management from Chris Greer up there or down there.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't think that a top 3 pick is going to fall into the Patriots' lap as much as some people hate this roster right now. But that's kind of, you know, the blueprint of how you want to build it. And they clearly believe in Tua. So yes, Miami got a lot better and they're going to extend Chubb and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. That's going to be a great, you know, edge combo here for the next couple of years in Miami that the Patriots and other teams are going to have to deal with. The other thing it tells me is Tua's here to stay in Miami.
Yeah.
Like Tua's not going anywhere. You don't make that move if you don't believe in your quarterback, because that first round pick, that's a valuable asset. If you don't believe in Tua, this is a strong quarterback class. Hendry, you know, would they get one of the top 2 guys? No, but Hendron Hooker of Tennessee, Will Levis of Kentucky, KJ Jefferson of Arkansas, Jaron Hall out of BYU, right? They're guys who are available with that potential pick. And they're saying, no, we're sticking with Tua. We're building around Tua. So I thought today, among other things, was a very, very strong show of support from the Miami Dolphins towards Tua Tagovailoa.
Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they're clearly going to, like you said, they're going to go forward with Tua. And they've been really good with Tua when he's healthy this year. I think they're 5-0 when he starts games. It's like he's really managing what they've put around him well. Obviously, I mean, it's tough to.
He's got a lot around him.
I was going to say it's tough to not play well with guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and an outstanding play caller like Mike McDaniel. But they're going to help him further as well because they got rid of Chase Edmonds and they brought in Jeff Wilson, who is yet another one of those San Francisco to Miami pipeline guys that McDaniels has done with, or McDaniel, excuse me. He did it with Raheem Mostert, and he's done it with Jeff Wilson too. So it's that's the type of running back they like there, a speed guy who they can utilize all over the place. And they ended up with McCaffrey out there in San Fran, so Jeff Wilson seemed to be expendable to the Dolphins. Another in AFC East move was it came right at the deadline. Was Nyheim Hines was traded to the Bills for Zach Moss and a conditional fifth. Nyheim Hines is sort of an all-purpose scat back in Indy, who a team that benched Matt Ryan, brought in Sam Ellinger to start. The Colts are sort of, I don't want to say, they're kind of in no man's land, frankly, because they have a pretty solid amount of talent on that team, but a guy in Chris Ballard, who has brought in a lot of quarterbacks over the last several years and can't really get it done. They seemed like a team that wanted to sell off a guy like Nyheim Hines, and a lot of teams were calling. Ends up being the Bills, who were involved in talks for Alvin Kamara. That didn't end up getting done, but they bring in a scat back and a guy who can sort of help continue to bolster that Bills offense.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good deal for the Bills. They didn't give up a ton. Zach Moss isn't necessarily going to play when you bring Nyheim Hines in. I don't really get why the Colts made that trade. To be honest, I don't think the Colts have had a good couple of weeks here. They're really hitting the reset button on their entire offense, and couldn't be better timing for the Patriots. But yeah, I thought that was a good trade for the Bills.
Yeah. Moving on, I'm just taking a look at this list here with sort of what deals can impact the Patriots, right? We saw it last week with. Go ahead.
No, I'll just say one that didn't impact Patriots directly, but I thought was interesting was the Calvin Ridley deal, because he's a guy that we heard the Patriots were in on prior to his suspension. Mm-hmm. And they, like I said before, right, getting Mac that guy, and Ridley's a bit of an unknown. And look, I'm not necessarily mad the Patriots didn't chase an unknown. That's kind of why they're in the spot they're in. They did that for years, right? Chasing guys, instead of paying that premium, paying a little bit less for guys with question marks and not working out. So
Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown, just to kind of name a few, right?
Ridley, I would even say Mohamed Sanu to an extent.
Sure.
Ridley certainly fits that category, but if you told me back, I don't remember when he got suspended at some point over the summer, but if you told me before he got suspended, you could get him for a second and a fifth. Yeah, that's a no-brainer deal. So I'm just wondering if the Patriots were in on that or not. We're in on trading for him or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, it's a bit of an unknown. The terms of the deal are kind of crazy. It's a fourth-round pick. It stays a fourth-round pick if Ridley's on their roster. It goes to a third-round pick if he reaches certain incentives, and it can become up to a second-round pick if the Jaguars end up keeping him around and sign him to an extension. So a guy who's mega talented, sat out some of last year with some mental health issues, and then was suspended for the full season. So a guy with some question marks surrounding whether he'll actually end up playing football or not. But if it works out well for the Jaguars, that's an amazing piece to surround Trevor Lawrence with on a team that already paid for a guy like Christian Kirk, who has been okay for them, and Travis Etienne as well. So they're really putting the pieces around their second-year guy. So again, another thing we're waiting to see what the Patriots will do. Another one that I think will affect the Patriots for sure is the TJ Hawkinson trade. Irv Smith, one of the Vikings tight ends, went on IR today with a high ankle sprain, missing a lot more time than Mac Jones with his high ankle sprain. It's up to like a 8 to 10 week recovery for him. So an inter-division trade for them, as the Lions sent TJ Hawkinson to the Vikings tight end for a second and a third, excuse me. It was a couple trade swaps in there, but the Patriots are going to see TJ Hawkinson for a second time this season when they play the Vikings on Thanksgiving Day. They've struggled against tight ends, as we've seen, when their safeties aren't healthy. So that could be interesting again on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, and look, they handled him last time, right? 1 catch for 6 yards. It goes back to kind of a bigger point. We'll talk about this when you get to the Jets. They need Kyle Duggar for that game because guess who covered TJ Hawkinson? Kyle Duggar.
Yep.
And it looks completely different when Kyle Duggar's not out there on the field. But yeah, I don't get why the Lions made that trade. That's a great deal for the Vikings. I mean, essentially getting TJ Hawkinson for a pick swap and spreading it over 2 years. Great job by Minnesota. And boy, did they need another option. Adam Thielen looked a little bit washed this year. Now he's hurt. They had and you know what? Even the thing with Thielen, like, they needed a big body guy, right? I don't want to say they needed a red zone guy because Justin Jefferson is obviously so good everywhere, but they needed that mismatch guy, just like that big physical presence. I honestly thought they were a team that would call him N'Keal Harry. Now, N'Keal Harry's not TJ Hawkinson, but I thought they may try to go the cheap route to fill that because, we have Justin Jefferson, we have Adam Thielen. How much do we need to really invest in this? But, Thielen goes down, suddenly it becomes a bigger issue. Boom. Great deal. And again, with Detroit in the division, just doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, it's strange. But again, like you said, huge for the Vikings because Justin Jefferson is that guy. He's probably the top 3 receiver in the NFL, certainly. And they needed someone to kind of take some pressure off Jefferson, take a defender off, take a safety. Now you have to worry about him. So, like, that'll open up Jefferson too. So a great deal for the Vikings, who are 6-1, a very sneaky 6-1. I feel like I haven't talked or really watched too much Minnesota Vikings football this year, but they're playing solid football and they got much better. Let's just talk about the Bears for a second because the Bears did some interesting things at the deadline. Last week, they traded Robert Quinn to the Eagles for a 4th-round pick, and then yesterday they traded Roquan Smith to the Ravens for a 2nd and a 5th. Looked like they were completely selling off, which, I mean, they still are in theory, but then they also traded for Chase Claypool, and they traded a 2nd-round pick to the Steelers for Claypool. So surrounding Justin Fields with another weapon while also selling off 2 of their best defenders. An interesting strategy, but I like the Claypool move because the Bears are so depleted at receiver. Did N'Keal Harry score a touchdown last week? Is that correct?
He did, yeah.
He did.
Yep.
So, but again, you can't rely on N'Keal Harry to be your touchdown scorer every week. Darnell Mooney's been pretty good, but I liked that deal. Claypool kind of in no man's land with the addition of Pickens this offseason in Pittsburgh and Deontay Johnson there as well. So, but yeah, the Bears made 3 moves, which they were probably the first or second most active team at the deadline behind like the Panthers and the Dolphins. So,
yeah, I thought that was. I don't really get why Pittsburgh quit on Chase Claypool because
me either.
Like we talked about before, you're trying to add a guy for your young quarterback. Well, they have a young quarterback, and look, Deontay Johnson's a good receiver, sure, and they might have something in George Pickens, but Claypool's the number 1 guy there, and I'm maybe not on high as him as some. Look, Bill compared him to Rob Gronkowski earlier this year, but that was a weird deal to me. That tells me that they're not sold on Kenny Pickett, which, again, to compare it to here, I know some people who are it's the 2nd year. You're already unsure about the quarterback. It's better than being unsure in the 1st year.
Right.
Like, so.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you have three, sorry to cut you off. You have 3, like, solid young receivers in Johnson, Pickens, and Claypool. Why are you, I mean, I guess they got a 2nd-round pick. So, that's a good, I guess, a value trade for them as well, because I think, did they take Claypool in the 2nd or 3rd round? So,
I mean, it was a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah. So, but again, it's like you have 3 solid guys plus a tight end and Pat Fryermuth around your rookie quarterback. I don't know why you're taking that away. But yeah, and then sorry, did you have more thoughts on Claypool? I kind of cut you off there.
No, that's pretty much it.
And then I mean, Roquan Smith to the Ravens. A lot of people feeling like that was a deal that the Patriots could have possibly made. Why didn't they send a 2nd round and a 5th round pick to the Bears? He's going to end up. I can't remember if he's already expensive or he's going to end up being expensive. But
he's going to end up being expensive. He needs a new deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's both. It's both. He's on his 5th-year option, which is
right. Okay.
Like, they would have had to clear money. The Patriots would have had to clear quite a bit of money to make that deal, and they just weren't in position. If they were to clear that kind of money, that 2nd-round pick becomes way more valuable. And suddenly it's not worth making that deal. So I think this is what people need to understand. And this isn't a Patriots fan thing. This isn't a football fan thing. I see this all the time at every deadline. Fans want to trade players away for the sake of trading them away, and they want to trade for players for the sake of trading for players, right? Why didn't we get anybody? Why? All right, what I always say to that is fine. Here's Isaiah Ford for conditional seventh, right? 2 years ago, didn't play a single game, was released before the end of the season. Like, sometimes the deal's not there, and people are going to call me a homer and say I'm defending Bill. You never make a trade for the sake of making a trade. You never do that. That's what stupid teams do.
Right.
That's what the Claypool deal felt like to me for Pittsburgh. It felt like them being, hey, we're in a rare spot where we're probably not a playoff team. Let's gain assets when we can. And that line of thinking led them to trading a player they shouldn't have traded. So you never make a deal just for the sake of making a deal. We don't know what the Patriots ultimately decided not to do. Like, do they get offered like a first for Kendrick Bourne and say no? That would be stupid to say no to. There's purpose behind that. I don't think they got offered that. I really don't. I think they would have taken that if they did. But the point being, you never make a trade just to make a trade. And it felt like a lot of the talk around the Patriots was one way or the other making a trade for the sake of making a trade. The one exception, I am surprised they did not deal Isaiah Wynn. And that's not because I think they're sellers. It's because I think it would have been addition by subtraction. I think he doesn't want to be here. I think he's checked out. He keeps getting benched. Like, he's the guy I'm pretty surprised still here. My bold prediction coming into the day my prediction, not even that bold.
Right.
My prediction coming into the day was they were going to trade away Isaiah Wynn and then trade for another lineman. That's what I thought was going to happen. Obviously it didn't, but if you want to complain about the Patriots' inactivity today, that's really the one spot where I'm like, yeah, they probably should have worked a little harder to figure something out, is moving on from Isaiah Wynn, because he doesn't have a purpose here right now, and he's in a contract year.
Right, yeah. I mean, before, I was going to give one last trade deadline thing here with just another team, but before we do that, let's go right into the Patriots and what they didn't do at the trade deadline, because there was a bunch of guys that were in trade rumors here over the last 2 weeks heading into today's deadline. And that was Isaiah Wynn, obviously, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Damian Harris, and then some Trent Brown activity today on Twitter, which seemed like he was
really.
It was, yeah. Apparently, for those who don't know, Trent Brown tweeted something along the lines of like, next chapter is beginning or something like that. And everyone thought he was going to get traded. And then he followed it up like 10 minutes later and said, oh, that was bad timing. Like, nothing's happening. So it kind of sent us reporters into a frenzy for a little while. But Trent Brown's here. Everyone's here. They didn't make any trade deadline moves. Isaiah Wynn, like you said, a guy who seemed like a candidate, and a lot of teams, it seems like teams are calling for him as well. But they didn't end up doing it. I don't know if interesting to know, and kind of a theory is that when they saw what happened with Cole Strange on Sunday, with just getting beat down by the two really solid Jets interior linemen, like, okay, we need this depth after all, and the fact that Isaiah can potentially spell him on the inside as well because he played there in college is we need the depth right now. But again, like you said, addition by subtraction kind of guy, a guy who doesn't seem bought in, a guy who's just going through the motions here, benched and back and forth, and it's like he doesn't really have a spot on the offensive line. So he doesn't get dealt. I mean, the wide receivers as well, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, two guys who were also in talks. But like we talked about on Sunday, Devontae Parker gets hurt. Looks like he'll miss at least a week, maybe two. So continuing to keep that depth in the wide receiver room is kind of seems like something they sort of cherished here going into the deadline.
Yeah, I'm glad they kept the wide receiver depth. There's just too many unknowns. Parker getting hurt. We still don't know entirely what kind of player Thornton is.
Right.
Aguilar was the one guy I thought maybe they could have dealt, but I thought they actually should have. Right? I don't think they should have dealt Aguilar. I thought if they were going to deal a wide receiver, he's probably the guy that they do.
Right.
That they would have moved. But I don't think they're going to get a ton for him. Like, all right,
there's no value there, right?
You traded Nelson Aguilar in a 7th for a 6th. Now what? Like, are you really in that much better of a position, short or long term, than you were before that deal? Like, that's what people need to understand. Get this guy off the roster is not a reason to trade somebody,
right?
For the most part, it's not. Occasionally it is. Robbie Anderson, like, that's an example of we need to get this guy off the roster, but Nelson Aguilar was not remotely close to that. He was not remotely close. And sorry he didn't get to move up 25 spots in the draft. Like that's all, like at the very end of the draft in the 200s. That's really all that deal would have been.
Right.
So
The guy who
yeah.
who that would have been is Isaiah Wynn, right? And it didn't happen.
Right. And
Aguilar,
again, that's a guy where you look at the kind of just the body language. Yeah, maybe you move him. He's a guy that maybe you make a point of getting off the roster. But a lot of these other guys, like people are ready to rush Damian Harris out the door. Why? He's a good running back on a team that needs to run the football. Again, he's not the starter, but how many times did I say this during the draft, Mike? I don't want to do Steven Jackson again. 2015. Right. No, we all went through that. The fact that people are willing to rush running back depth, quality running back depth out the door on this team for no reason other than adding a bottom, sub 200 draft pick in the NFL is insane. And this is from the guy who lives for the draft after it hits pick 200. Keeping Damian Harris around is not the worst thing in the world.
Right. And again, the reason I think that was sort of even a floated idea, and it's why I kept sort of talking about the idea of potentially getting some real value for a guy like Jacoby Myers, which they didn't do. He's their best receiver. I get it. I don't think they should have necessarily, but it was an idea because it's an expiring contract, right? You want to try and get some value, and I know there's the comp pick scenarios here, but like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the reason Harris was there, but they need to sort of start to dial back Stevenson's reps here as we talk about every single time we run this show. But so yeah, that's sort of where the Patriots ended up. Any real thoughts? I mean, no. I mean, a Shaq Thompson, the Panthers, which let's go into the Panthers because I think the Panthers completely won this NFL trade deadline, like bar none. They, like you said, you just mentioned Robbie Anderson. They get rid of him, who was a complete cancer in the locker room, running off the field, not playing, like nonsense. Antonio Brown type stuff from him. They trade him to the Cardinals for a 6th and a 7th round pick. And then they also got the haul for McCaffrey, which I get. Christian McCaffrey is a top 10 player in the league, but they get a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th for him. So like they get rid of Christian McCaffrey, who's not going to help a rebuild because you want to try and limit the whole keeping a running back around too long type thing because it kind of hamstrings you.
Right.
They get rid of him and Robbie Anderson, who's, the nonsensical guy in the locker room, and they get a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, and a 7 for 2 guys. Like a complete rebuild, and they still keep their guys like Brian Burns and their Shaq Thompsons and Jeremy Chins and the guys they can continue to, I mean, Thompson's a little older, but guys they can build around. So I think the Panthers, who've also played really well the last 2 weeks, they've won their last 2 games with PJ Walker at the helm. I think the Panthers are kind of getting themselves back into a pretty good spot. They'll have a chance to hire a better head coach than Matt Rule, and I don't think they're going to stick with Wilkes. So I think the Panthers easily won the deadline.
And you know what? The other thing about those moves is a lot of those guys you just named who are still there have pretty significant cap hits coming up. And the deadline for restructuring contracts for trades was actually Monday. And you're not going to do that unless you know for sure you're going to trade the guy. They can still move those guys in the offseason if they want. And it'll be easier. They'll have more value. Teams have more to spend. So, yeah, Panthers did it right. Panthers absolutely did it right. Thompson was the one guy I thought maybe because his contract structured in a weird way could get moved. But like some of those guys will still get dealt. But we do this. We also do this with every deadline. Like half the superstars in the league get named. Those kind of deals happen in the offseason. They rarely happen at the deadline, especially in football.
Yeah, which again, kind of a crazy deadline today. We'll wrap it up there, but I mean, 10 trades on deadline day is the most in NFL history. There was like 20 major trades with like big name people and big name assets being moved around. So I like that it's sort of turned into an NBA trade deadline because it makes deadline day that much more fun to, report on, write about, but also just from a fan perspective to kind of watch these guys get moved around. It's good stuff. So a lot of guys looking for sort of getting in new jobs, new places. So what better way to segue into LinkedIn?
There you go. Now you're learning how to do this. There you go. Good
yes. Let's talk about jobs, right? Because these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's getting towards the end of 2022, so what better way to finish off the year strong than with the right team member? LinkedIn Jobs makes it super easy to post your job, and once you do, just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That was probably my favorite segue into an ad read in my short
That's
time
what
hosting.
I used to give Evan crap for that all the time. That
Yeah.
he would be so, he'd have the perfect setup. He'd get clunky into it. That's how you do it. That's how you keep
Yep.
people involved all the way through. You're
Oh,
learning.
yeah.
There you go. Good
So
job.
go to it. If you got a business, you got a small business, you got anything, go to linkedin.com/beat. Helps us pay the bills around here and it helps you find your hire. So
There you go.
let's get into, we'll touch on Patriots Jets again. We talked about it Sunday, but the Patriots lost to the Jets. The Patriots beat the Jets 22-17 on Sunday. They go to 4-4, and look, it was ugly. We know, but I have a hard time nitpicking a win, right? Because it's hard to win football games in the NFL, and sometimes you just got to win them ugly. So, I mean, after taking a look at sort of where this team stands and what's up with Mac Jones and the quarterback room and everything, it's like they're in a spot where they can sort of compete for a playoff spot here if they keep sort of just churning out ugly wins like this and they improve the quarterback room. And look, I think they've sort of, I said it last night on the Sports Hub I was on with Adam Jones, I think they've sort of stunted Mac's growth a little bit here with what they've kind of put around him from an offensive perspective and the coaches, but like he played better than the stats showed and what it kind of looked at first glance. The pick six was ugly. It looked like, again, a miscommunication. A lot of people said it was more on Myers than Mac. So, I mean, it's tough. Again, you don't see your receiver sort of turn for the ball. You got to say, don't throw the football there, right? But you don't know where he's turning and when and whatever the case may be. So that's sort of where I am with this game. It's like, okay, they won. So let's call it a win. But Alex, any thoughts and sort of where what you saw over the last couple of days kind of breaking down this thing?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing where like it feels like Mac's making progress, which is great. Kind of sucks that that's the big takeaway in week 8. Like if it was week 2, we'd be like, all right, new offensive coordinator and they're moving right along. Now, look, he hasn't played all 8 games, so there's that element to it. It's all a mess. It's all a mess. And this is what it's really felt like since camp. Once with the offense, once something gets going, something else fails. The offensive line was struggling, and then they got good. And then the wide receivers started not being able to produce. And the wide receivers came back, and then Mac was playing poorly. And then Mac got hurt, and then the play calling was bad. Now the play calling's better, but the offensive line sucks again. Like they can't put it all together, right? It feels like in theory, all of the pieces are there for them to at least be a competent offense. I'm not saying they're going to come out and put up 50, but it feels like all of the pieces are there for them to be a competent offense. They just can't all get together. And that's usually a coaching thing. I think it is in this case, but
as do I.
Like right now, they've got to figure out that offensive line. They have to figure it out. And at a certain point, and I know they don't want to do this, right? Michael Onwenu has talked about how helpful it has been for him this year to just be able to stick at one position after moving around the last 2 years. And look, they have screwed with him by moving him around, and it's not great. But he's the best right tackle on this roster. One way, however you want to slice it, he is the best right tackle on this roster. That is their biggest hole. I would rather cover up a hole at guard than at tackle. It's easier to cover up a step down at guard than it is at tackle. Now, they don't really have another right guard, right? Their right guards are like big, mauling people movers. The left guard's the more athletic spot. Ferentz, he might just be a center, but if he's anything beyond that, he's a left guard. You're not moving Cole Strange to right. Isaiah Wynn's not a right guard. I know a lot of people want him to be. I know a lot of people like to talk about him like he's one. He's not a right guard. Now you're going down to the practice squad. If Chasen Hines wasn't on IR, I would say kick Michael Onwenu out to right tackle, put Chasen Hines in at right guard, see what he can do. Boom, you're good. This is why I wanted them to trade for an interior offensive lineman today. I wanted them to trade for a right guard, but I don't think they're going to do it. That's what I would do. I know this show is about what they're going to do. Right. This is what I would do. I think at some point their hand's going to be forced into doing it because Isaiah Wynn's, I've said enough about Isaiah Wynn on the show and where I think he's at. Marcus Cannon's fine, but he's old.
He wasn't great, though. Age. He was not great on,
He's going to be what he is, which is average to below average, right? And there's something to be said for consistency, and that's why I think if they're not going to put Onwenu out there, he's their best option. Best option doesn't mean good option, right?
Right.
They could try moving Trent back, but now you're moving too many pieces. I don't like that.
Right.
Yodny
for a guy who's like, Trent Brown at that position, who like as it is rather inconsistent. To be moving him back and forth on the ends is not a good recipe for him either. Sorry. Continue.
Right. Yodny Kajust, now that he's off IR, should get a shot. He needs to get a shot because, again, there's really no answer here. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens, because if the offensive line plays like that, I don't care who you put back there, right? And I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl team, but look at what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the Bucs. Look at Joe Burrow last year against the Rams. Doesn't matter who your quarterback is. He has a second and a half to throw. He's not going to be able to do anything. So they have to get that figured out. I forget who it was who said this today. It was one of the film guys. It might have been Taylor Kyles, who, by the way, does a fantastic job. I'm a huge fan of Taylor. Shout out to Taylor. You can't even really evaluate Mac until the offensive line gets figured out. You can't. So they've got to get, you can complain about Mac all you want and Zappy. And I know, again, it's going to be in the replies that these guys just they're too nice to Mac and people want Zappy because he looked better. Zappy's not going to look any better behind that offensive line. Nobody's going to look better behind that offensive line. They have to get that thing figured out.
Right. I mean, again, it's like this. I'm done with Zappy talk, frankly, because what we saw at the end of the Bears game, like, Zappy's not going to be the answer here either. If you want to move on from Mac, you move on from Mac at the end of the year for these people talking about this, and then you reset with a better draft pick, because Zappy's unfortunately not going to be the answer here either. He showed his cards the other night too. But, like, again, I was fine with the way Mac played. The more we kind of got to look at some things. There was one specific play, and I think I mentioned this on Sunday, but these quarterbacks that are so good in the NFL now with the Mahomes and the Allens, right? And even Aaron Rodgers has shown it for years. They're able to make off-platform throws. And by that, it's the not essentially setting your feet and kind of having to quickly, snap your hips and just chuck a ball out there with your arm strength. And there was like twice in this game where I saw Mac Jones do that for the first time basically ever in his NFL career. So those are two things that I saw that I was like, oh, okay, like he's sort of showing a little bit more of a skill set. And again, like you said, putting all the blame on Mac here is just like, frankly, it's crazy because the offensive line, the inconsistencies, right? Like again, you just sort of went through this too, and that's sort of what I'm getting at here is that, like, until it's offensive line plays great, Matt Patricia calls a great game with a great game script, the running backs are getting their, 4 or 5 yards of carry, and the receivers are getting open, and it's clear that Mac is just not making the reads, and his internal clock is sped up, and he has the time, but he's not using it. That's when it's like, okay, let's take a look and really truly see where Mac Jones is. It's not even close to that time because there has been so much inconsistency around him, frankly, for the last almost over a year now, ever since the bye week last year.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with Mac Jones. Again, as he gets healthier and as they sort of look, I've been the biggest critic of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge the last 3 weeks as sort of what they've done with play calling and with Bailey at the helm versus Mac, right? But it hasn't been easy for them either. It's not easy to have to call 2 games for 2 different quarterbacks and, dumb things down and then ramp them up again. And so if I hate to give them the benefit of the doubt because, again, I've been such a huge critic, but as things get ironed out, it'll get better and easier for them, and then we'll hopefully be able to see a little bit more from Mac Jones. So, but another thing on the offense, and I mean, well, let's get into this because Ramondre Stevenson is like turning into just an absolute like monster of a running back before our eyes, catching the ball, running the ball. If there was no such thing as like fatigue and getting battered and injured, I would want Ramondre Stevenson on the field every single play for my team.
Right. Turn off the injury slider.
Exactly. Right. Let's go on Madden and turn down those sliders because the dude's a monster. He had 16 for 71 on the ground, which along of 35, so that was a little bit skewed. But then he has 7 catches for 72 yards. They're completely unlocking him as a receiving back now, which we barely saw last year. And with Harris going down and them sort of putting up his workload. He's turned into a receiving back, and he's done really well at it. He grabs the ball, he makes great reads, great blocks. So, again, I'm astounded by where Ramondre Stevenson's gone from year 1 to year 2.
Kid put in the work, man. Tip your cap.
Yeah.
He told us at the end of the year that he was going to focus more on the pass catching back role, and that includes receiving and blocking. He came into camp. He told us he'd focused on it in the offseason, and the works totally showed. For a guy who came into camp as a rookie, didn't pass his conditioning test,
right,
to where he is now, just incredible growth. I mean, this is the kind of guy, like, that's like captain track. I know we talk about the Patriots never re-signing running backs, but that second contract track, man, he's been unreal in every single way you could possibly want him to. Super nice guy too, for what it's worth. Like, great. Seems like a guy, humble guy, seems like a guy who everybody gets along with in the locker room. I mean, I know people are going to like roll their eyes on this because it's the running back and it's not necessarily a high impact position, but you can't really hit on a draft pick any more than they hit on Ramondre Stevenson. He's done everything you could ask for.
100%. Like, even like you said, just in the locker room guy, like, again, we're here for X's and O's, mostly here on Patriots Beat and sort of the nitty gritty stuff, but a guy who's like consummate pro, him and Damian Harris, they have a good running back room as far as like, as far as people skills and like being like just good dudes. Max said it yesterday on WEEI. He was like, those are my best buddies. Like, those guys are awesome. So, I don't know. Tip of the cap to Ramondre, who's having a really good year. Same with Jacoby Myers, contract year, a guy who's just balling out. Anything more on the offense? We can quickly touch on defense, but if you have any last thoughts on the offense before we kind of transfer over to what the defense did on Sunday.
I know some people are concerned that Kendrick Bourne and Tyquan Thornton weren't involved in that game. I'm actually not, because we talked about this when we previewed the game. They got really good boundary corners down there in New York.
Yeah.
2 really good boundary corners. The way to attack that team is short in between the hashes, and that's exactly what the Patriots did. They used Jacoby Myers. They threw the running backs. Like, that was actually a smart game plan decision. Credit to Matt Patricia there. That was a smart game plan decision to not and for Mac Jones too, making the reads, to not force the ball to the outside. So I've seen some people worried about that. Against the Colts, a little bit of a different story. So we'll see. But again, people are, these wide receivers aren't producing. That's a game where you probably weren't going to ask them to do a lot based on the matchup. So doesn't bother me as much as I think it does some people.
It's just another unproductive week for KB, which is like kind of too bad, because it's a guy who, I mean, he's got all the talent in the world. He's another guy who's like just really team guy right now, where he's just standing in there and working hard and nothing's really showing for it. So, I mean, I hope they can continue to scheme him into the offense, as like I said before, as they sort of get more comfortable and get some consistency here on offense. Hopefully they kind of realize that, okay, I mean, Kendrick Bourne can work. He can work some guys in the secondary. So, agreed that this isn't the game you should really be worried about it. But we'll see what happens moving forward and where they stand with Kendrick Bourne.
Right.
Patriots defense on Sunday was solid. They had a really good game. They did enough to win. They had 3 interceptions off Zach Wilson, but I think the bread and butter sort of point here from the defense is just that Zach Wilson is awful, right? I mean,
terrible. For everybody complaining about Mac Jones, look at Zach Wilson. What you all think Mac Jones is terrible. He's not an NFL. Here's the difference. And I know Mac didn't look like, I thought he looked okay. He looked average.
Yeah.
Mac has at least looked good in the NFL before. He has a full season of good NFL performance. He took a team to 10 wins in the playoffs. Zach Wilson always looks like that. Always, for a year and a half, has looked like that. And the crazy thing is, Mac probably looks the way he does more because of the situation than anything else. We've talked about this going back to the summer with them changing the system and the coaching staff and all of that. I can't believe I'm about to say this. The Jets are actually not a bad situation to be in for a young quarterback. They've got, I think Robert Saleh knows what he's doing, right? LaFleur's, I'm not a huge fan of that coaching tree, but is it Matt or Mike is the OC there on blanket?
That's Mike.
Like Mike LaFleur, I think he knows what he's doing it's a quarterback easy system at the very least. There's no denying that. They've got a good defense. He's got good players to throw the ball to. Their offensive line doesn't suck. It's not the best in the league. It doesn't suck. Every reason in the world, Zach Wilson should be good, and he's not.
Right.
That's just a guy who's not good at the game. So
it's too bad too, because there's times where he eludes pressure. He's got outstanding footwork, and he gets out of the pocket, and it's like
it doesn't matter. He won't throw the ball away. He refuses to throw the ball away.
That's what I'm getting at, though. That was my point here.
Yeah.
It's like he does that, and he looks so good, and you're like, oh my god, he's gonna find Garrett Wilson streaking across the field, and then he just doesn't throw it away, and he chucks it up and literally places it right in Devin McCourty's number.
I think he thinks that is throwing it away. I think he thinks if he puts it 6 feet off the boundary, 6 inches off the boundary, he'll throw it away. Zach, throw it into the stands. You have the arm for it. And he says after the game he doesn't want to throw the ball away because he doesn't believe in it. Believe in it. Throw it away. Yeah. You're not at BYU anymore, right? Throw the freaking it's wild. And I don't think it's a coaching thing, because Joe Flacco, say what you will about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco knows to throw the ball away. He's been in this league long enough. I can't imagine he's never once pulled Zach Wilson aside and said, hey, just throw it to a fan.
Yeah. Throw it to me. Throw it to me.
Right.
Find my 19 jersey on the sideline and chuck it into my face. Like,
he's clearly not taking the coaching. Zach Wilson isn't. So, look, the Patriots defense did some good things in this game, and we can get into those in a second, but holy crap, Zach Wilson looks like he's beyond repair, because the pieces are there. Garrett Wilson can play, right? Elijah Moore can play. I might be on Elijah Moore's side in this whole thing. He's maybe being a little too vocal about it, but I might be on his side. Tyler Conklin can kind of play. That's the best game he's had all year. He hasn't looked that good, but he looks like he can play. They've got some running backs. He's got the pieces around him, right? Yeah. He's got the pieces around him, but he just can't figure it out. He threw for 355 yards in that game. I went back and watched the tape. It probably should have been 500. It probably should have been 500.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, quickly too on the Mike LaFleur thing, because, and then we'll wrap up the defense and get into our non-Patriots Boston sports stuff and whatnot. But like with Mike LaFleur, interestingly enough, we talk about an easy system and a guy who knows how to call an offense. But the one thing that I don't really seem to understand is why they didn't draw up some more quarterback runs. Or, like we saw the Chris Streveler thing, they activated him, and it's like, why didn't you bring him in to maybe take advantage of the Patriots not being able to cover running quarterbacks? They were taunting Bill. Like, yeah, but like they taunt Bill with the Streveler move, right? And then they don't do anything with Zach Wilson. So that was a missed opportunity that, from what I saw from Mike LaFleur, not using Zach Wilson Zach Wilson's not a speed demon, but he can get you 7 yards. Like, right. That's all you need to stay on schedule. So that was kind of a missed opportunity for them, I thought, on offense.
Well, I'll say this, and it goes into something I think the Patriots did really well, independent of Zach Wilson being an absolute dumpster fire. They were so much more disciplined in terms of their rush. Like, we talked about this after the Bears game, right? They're over pursuing, they're overextending, they're creating all these rushing lanes, and that's where Justin Fields, on whether it was 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17, whatever, he's converting these with his legs. Yeah. They were just out there hunting sacks, and you can't do that, especially not the Patriots defensive system. I thought in this game, they were only credited with 2 sacks. They were only credited with, I think, 2 pressures. But they were in Zach Wilson's face constantly, right? And they stayed on top of him, but it was good team football, right? They're aware of where their teammates are, and they're hemming them in, and they're it's almost like a dog corralling sheep, right? Except the other way around. It was multiple where they just kind of boxed him in on the boundary and then made him make a decision, either take the sack or force a throw. And if they over pursue there, he comes back around, right? He bends it back around. He has room to run. Matthew Judon, Dietrich Wise, Daniel Aquale, I thought all were great in this. So it was really great to see the defensive line have a bounce back game in that sense, in a disciplined sense, after what they did against the Bears.
Definitely. And it's sort of, it's bouncing off what Zach Wilson did as far as not great, but like, I mean, Devin McCourty has two interceptions in the game, the active leader in interceptions currently in the NFL. So shows Devin's age a little bit, but also shows that the guy can still play some ball, especially against some poor competition over there in New York. But one of the plays was a good play. It looked like Zach Wilson was throwing the ball away sort of towards the sideline, and that's the one where he didn't get it out of bounds enough. And I mean, McCourty makes a really athletic play on the sideline and grabs the ball. The other one was just him chucking it up into no man's land, and it lands in McCourty's teeth. But he had, again, a solid game from the safety position that they kind of desperately needed with Duggar out. They allowed Tyler Conklin, like we had mentioned, to have 6 catches for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Bledsoe wasn't great from a safety position, but I thought Jabril Peppers played pretty well. He led them with 8 tackles. He did make some bonehead decisions we had mentioned on Sunday, but it was just like there was a play where he doesn't get called for like a clear late hit or a aggressive hit on Garrett Wilson, and then the following play he goes and gets a late hit and gets called for it. It's like, you just lucked out. Like, let's play smart football here. But I thought he was pretty solid, again, just in Duggar's absence. They want Duggar back really badly, and they miss him. He's the most important player on their defense, I think, outside of maybe Judon. But I mean, they need Kyle Duggar back soon.
Well, they've been down 2 of their 3 best defensive players in Duggar and Barmore, right? And that was the other thing, to see the defensive line play the way it did without Christian Barmore, where he's normally the guy to defend that kind of quarterback, I think was very, very encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, again, a win's a win. So that's the defense. They did enough to win. Zach Wilson handed them one there, but funny, Zach Wilson after the game too, the guy has just no sense of awareness. He's like, we got these guys in 2 weeks. Like, they better watch out. It's like, you just
I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Like,
you have 6 picks against them in 3 career games. I'm sure you'll figure it out in 2 weeks. You'll be fine. Hey,
a fan of his at BYU.
I had him as QB6. I had him as QB6 in that draft. I had him behind Kyle Trask. So
interesting.
I got called out for that one.
But yeah, that's the defense. Special teams quickly before we
one more thing on the defense. One more thing on the defense.
Go for it.
I still have Jack Jones fever. I really do. I think he's going to be an outstanding corner, but you saw in that game why they're not playing him 90% of the time yet. Why it's still like 60, 65. The tackling's still an issue. There were 2 instances, obviously the big one late in the game on the Garrett Wilson catch and run, but there's one earlier too. I forget which back it was. I think it was Carter, where he sort of just pushes him from behind instead of tackling him another teammate's wrapping him up, which allows Carter to fall forward and pick up. It was like 3 or 4 extra yards. He's got to start wrap tackling, man. He's got to start, arm tackling, and he's got to get away from the shoulder tackling. So once he does that, he's going to be a real big time player. I really do believe that. I'm a huge fan of his, but
yeah, so am I. That's
you kind of
why
saw
he's not sauce.
Right. But yeah, exactly. You kind of saw it in that game where he's got to start making some real tackles.
Yeah. Highest grade corner in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, Jack Jones is. But again, the snap count's a little bit down.
It's PFF also grades corners really weird.
Yeah.
PFF corner, and it's not take away from Jack. He's been outstanding. But
I mean, the guys up there though are guys like Sauce Gardner and Jalen Ramsey, so it's not like it's not graded out completely bizarrely where it's like a bunch of randos.
How's Jalen Ramsey looked this year?
Again, it makes sense. Like that's sort of to your
it's
point.
Just more
like
they
degrade it funny, but no, I mean, Ramsey's a good corner in the league. Like, you can't take that away from him. But he does look funky sometimes. But again, Jack Jones, for what it's worth, to a metric, is the top corner in the league according to Pro Football Focus. Special teams. My one thing, Nick Folk's a beast. Revenge game for him against the Jets. Goes 5 for 5 kicking. Also had the extra point. They've always had a good kicker here. It's something that in a league where the kickers are really bad, it's really nice to be able to look at your kicker and say, you're going to go out there and you're going to get me 3 when we're inside the 35, like every time. Yeah. And Nick Folk's able to do that for them. They've had it with Vinatieri, they had it with Gostowski, and now they have it again with Folk. So, I mean, good on Nick Folk, a guy who's older in the league too, been around and kind of found his niche here in New England.
Yeah, he's been awesome. I'll just add a big time bounce back day for Jake Bailey. He had 2 of his 4 punts were high 20s. He had another one fair caught at the 21. That was like it was a field flipping punt. It would have been tough to get inside the 20. And then his one touchback was probably his best punt of the day. Should have been down inside the 5. That was a DeMarcus Mitchell play. So good to see him bouncing back. Yeah. Big plays from the rookies too. Brandon Schooler made a big tackle. Obviously the Marcus Jones return, Jabril Peppers on the block. So much, much better day for the special teams. And look, they need to get rolling because they had their worst game of the year last year against the Colts. That special teams was a huge reason the Patriots lost that game. So they need to get back on track here. They needed a good game and they got it. Now they've got a tough test this week.
Yep. Not ready to call them the juggernaut they were yet because, again, the bonehead play by Mitchell in the end zone rolling in, but those are things you got to clean up. And again, I've said it 4 or 5 times now, but a win's a win. So it's like it's good to be able to get a win and then be able to look at that tape and fix it instead of it being the reason you lost the game. So that's sort of where we stand here with Patriots Jets. Again, the Pats beat the Jets 22-17 in Week 8 on Sunday. They will welcome in the Colts next week with Sam Ehlinger at the helm. But we will break that down on Thursday. But let's break off some Patriots talk here because we have some really interesting and important Boston sports news, Boston Sports Minute. We need some music. Pew pew pew. We need something to come in here when this thing comes in. But a couple news items that I'm trying to find a lower third here. There we go. The Brooklyn Nets agreed to part ways with head coach Steve Nash, who had been there for 2 seasons, and a guy who I just felt bad for because he was a guy who didn't even want to come into coaching. When they sort of lured him in, they lured him into Brooklyn. They made him a babysitter, and then they basically just shoved him out the door when the whole Kyrie nonsense goes. And it's like a babysitter in Brooklyn. It's tough to coach there, but he leaves. They call it a mutual parting of ways, but it was more. Okay, yeah. It was right. Kendrick Perkins had a funny tweet today. It was like, "What does this even mean?" It's like Sean Marks went into him and said, "Steve Nash, you're fired," and he goes, "Yes, I agree," and then walked out. So it's like they agreed to part ways, but the reason that this is so interesting is that Shams Charania reported that the Nets plan to hire Celtics suspended head coach Ime Udoka. And the interesting part here is that Boston granted the Nets permission to talk to him, and they're allowing him to leave freely, which I have a hard time with that. I do. I think that I know it's like, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts too, because I haven't really talked or debated this with anyone yet, but it just seems like terrible asset management on their part, because I know that they probably just want to kick him out the door and, wipe their hands clean of this Ime Udoka guy who caused so many different problems in their locker room and in their building and whatnot. But a guy who was a really good coach last year, one of the better coaches in the NBA, brings a team to the finals for the first time since 2010. You have him under contract. Let's go try and get something for him when the Nets kind of want this guy to bring this guy in, a guy who coached Durant before in Brooklyn, who probably is going to do great things in Brooklyn with some quality talent there. I think it's kind of silly for them to just say, you know what, go, have it. What say you?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just wonder if it's a case of they don't want to take advantage of what may be a very ugly situation, right? If what Ime Udoka did comes out, and it's funny now that there's talk about him joining the Nets, and it sounds like he's going to join the Nets, right? You're starting to hear some details. There was a report for Nets Wire today about he's sending messages to women, plural. It kind of looks bad on the Celtics if, you used their pain to pick up first-round picks. They may also,
but that also looks bad on the Nets. That looks worse on the Nets.
So here's the thing: let it be bad for the Nets. Let it be bad for the Nets and be done with it. What is the Nets investigation? We heard this with the Browns, that they did an investigation on Deshaun Watson and they were happy with it. And then after he got traded, there were 5-6 more allegations.
Right.
So is this a case of, because this is my question. This is what I was asking people today when I was down at Sports Hub. How long is Ime going to coach the Nets? How long do you think he's there? I think it's less than a year, because I think that the Celtics this was not a suspension as a punishment. This was a suspension as let's just get him out of sight until we can figure out how to fire him without getting sued. That's what it felt like to me. If it's that bad, I don't believe the Nets did their due diligence. And I think at some point soon, information's going to come out that the Nets aren't going to be able to keep him. They're just not going to be able. Then again, who knows with all the crap that Kyrie's pulling.
Right.
But
yeah,
if it's a matter of the Celtics wanting to wash their hands of the incident and not want to be seen as benefiting from it, I'm okay with them not getting anything back. I really am, because I think that there is, and I always say that there's no moral high ground in sports. I think that's more of a reaction to the industry than anything else. And I'm fine with the Celtics doing that. If it's not that and they just really hate the guy, well, then still get something for him. But
right.
I think, I said this even before this news came. There's another shoe that's going to drop here, and it's not going to be pretty. I don't know what it is. I don't.
Happens.
But there's he did something. This is beyond, he sent a "you up" text to the wrong person once.
Right.
He did something bad, and he did it repeatedly. The Net, by the way, did you see the Nets are hiring a head of PR
that's
right
so
now?
funny.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
He did something that they're going to have to answer for. And I think this is the Celtics saying, hey, let them answer for it, right? Why should we have to answer for it at all? Let them answer for it. So Nets are kind of a scummy organization. We've known that. And this is just another layer.
Yeah, it makes me think too, just what you said there, though, about the Celtics. They suspend him, but they don't cut ties immediately. Almost like they also don't want to have to pay out his contract for firing him for wrongful cause or whatever the case may be. But it's at that point, though, too, if it's that bad, it doesn't matter. So similarly to what you had said about them not wanting to grab a pick because of what he did, if they're keeping him around so they don't have to pay him, that also seems like something that's if it was really that bad, then
it's not
they're probably not going to end up having to pay him anyway.
It's not necessarily keeping him around so they don't have to pay him. It's keeping him around long enough to figure out how to get rid of him without a lawsuit.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Okay.
I come from a family of lawyers. There was a lot of lawyer talk thrown around in a lot of those reports in the days following the initial suspension, which told me, the lawyers are the lawyers are running this. The
and
lawyers
in the way
are
the
in charge on
the
both
news
sides.
was coming out too,
right?
So the way things were worded and the order in which they came out and who reported what.
Right. Lawyers don't get involved unless there's a chance of a lawsuit.
Right.
One way or the other, whether it was wrongful termination, whether it was Ime suing the Celtics, whether it was the Celtics suing Ime, whether it was a Celtics employee suing the team, whatever it was going to be. I just think that they wanted him out of sight and out of mind while they dealt with everything, and firing him wasn't the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So let the Nets deal with it. They've shown their true colors here the last week. They absolutely have the least likable team in the NBA, which is crazy when you think about, what's going on with the Lakers. But I kind of like watching the Lakers because they're hilarious.
It's just funny. Yeah.
But the Nets showed their true colors this week, and it looks like it's only getting worse. But not letting Kyrie talk today and all of that, and
crazy.
let them deal with all these questions. Celtics are kind of a fun bunch right now. I know they can't play a lick of defense, but they're a fun team right now. Just keep it that way.
Well, that's sort of where we can quickly go from this too. What do you think of Missoula so far? And just do they take the interim tag off now that Udoka's out of the picture, and do they just make Missoula the guy, or do they see how this plays out and maybe open up the search again next year? Again, it's a team with quality players and in the right direction for sure, and I think the guys really like him around. But just go ahead. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're going to leave the interim tag on. I think they're going to wait till the end of the year and see who becomes available. But it's too early to make any sweeping decision. They got to get the defense figured out. But I mean, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are showing up. I mean, they've been excellent. Is Tatum the MVP favorite right now? I mean, he should be up there. I guess Giannis is probably.
Yeah.
Who's the favorite right now, though?
Let's look.
Last time you checked.
Last time I checked, I believe it was Giannis and John Morant was up there as well.
Oh, I love me some John Morant. I really do. But I mean, Tatum's right there, and that's awesome to see. He's taken that next leap, and we're only going to be able to talk about him improving for so many more years. He's not a kid anymore. So really like what I've seen with that.
Yeah, me too. Good players. Good.
Yeah.
Him and Brown are just like you said. They're a great duo in the league. Probably one of the best duos in the league for sure. But yeah, that's our Boston Sports Minute. Nets fire Steve Nash. Look like they're bringing an email.
Real quick on this too. Chris Sale picked up his $55 million option.
Oh, God.
I don't want to hear crap about him coming back and saving the team next year. Anything you get from him is gravy. You can count on him for exactly 0 innings, and anything you get beyond that is a cherry on top. I don't want to do this again with Chris Sale. I don't want to do signing pitchers without functioning elbows again, Chaim. Go get actual baseball players who can currently play the game.
Play baseball, right.
All right, I know you're paying him $55 million. Sorry, it's a bad contract. That doesn't mean you have to play him. It certainly doesn't mean you have to count on him.
Right.
It's my quick Red Sox thought.
Well, then let's round it up with Bruins, because we talked about the other two. We talked about some betting. I tweeted it today. The Bruins, I don't know when the last time we touched on it here on this podcast, but they're off to a scorching red hot start to this season. That looks like they're also going to get Charlie McAvoy back soon. He practiced in full the other day. They're the third most likely team to win the Stanley Cup, behind the Avalanche and the Flames. So they're killing it. I mean, that's whether that's, you see the betting lines there, and it's that's more so them moving towards the hot and popular team, and not necessarily what they think's going to happen. It's more so them trying to make the most money possible. But they're up there, and they're the talk of the NHL right now. They're the best team in hockey through the first couple weeks here.
Yeah, WH kind of makes a good point in the chat there. I don't know that it's necessarily them peaking too early, but this is what the Bruins always do. They'll have like these month and a half stretches where they're the best team in hockey, and then they kind of dip back down to 500, and then they'll get really good. And it's just like they never hit this stretch in the playoffs. So it's nice to know they can play up to this. I think they've been able to play up to this the last couple of years, but they've got to do it. I hate being this guy because you got to do a show today, right? They've got to do it into the summer. They've got to do it in the playoffs, but it's fun to watch. They're fun as hell to watch. And maybe there were some questions about whether or not they had this in them, given the injuries they had, but they have it in them. Clearly they do.
And Allmark's been outstanding between the pipes too, which is good to see, because
who saw that coming? I thought Swayman was going to be the guy.
I was going to say, that's a position where I thought it's like, okay, Allmark's another year older, and Swayman's, maturing even more and whatever. And I mean, not that Swayman's necessarily been bad. He had one bad game, but he played okay and bounced back. But I mean, Allmark's been a beast. So good on the Bees. But let's do our other favorite minute here on the Patriots View podcast. There it is, college football minute now. Let's do it, because the College Football Playoff Committee released their first top 25 today, and it was definitely interesting. I don't know if you got to take a look at it before you hopped on here, but currently in the playoff is Tennessee at the 1 seed, Ohio State at the 2, Georgia at the 3, and the Clemson Tigers at 4, with Michigan and Bama just on the outside. Your thoughts on where they have the top 6, at least, and then we can get into some later ones.
Falls, baby. Number 1
I
team in the
know. I didn't think that was going to happen.
And the biggest critique of the AP poll always is that the preseason rankings skew it, because the preseason rankings are always bad. They always put too much weight on last season, which makes no sense. They respect the defending champion too much, but it carries over, right? Because if you start ranked high, even if you don't beat anybody, like anybody good, as long as you're winning, you stay high. That's the beauty of the college football playoff rankings. They start in November. Tennessee has been the best team in the country. The win over Alabama makes the difference. Georgia doesn't have that kind of win. Ohio State does not have that kind of win. Clemson, Michigan. Honestly, TCU might have the next best win. That doesn't mean TCU's second best team, but might have the next best win. That being said, I would have put Georgia second. I might have put TCU third. Who is Ohio State beaten? Who is Michigan beaten? They both beat Penn State. I think Penn State's overrated. Yeah, so that's where that comes from.
Sean Clifford's terrible.
I guess Georgia, actually, let me take that back. Georgia beat Oregon. I would have gone Tennessee. Oh, no, I said Georgia second, right? Yeah, because Georgia beat Oregon. Tennessee, Georgia, and then it dips. I would go TCU, Ohio State, Michigan. I guess you have to put Clemson ahead of Alabama because they're undefeated. But seriously, who is Clemson beaten?
I don't know why they got in over Michigan.
Are we going to pretend Syracuse is good? They're clearly not after the last 2 weeks. Are we going to pretend NC State's good? I like Dennis Leary, but not really. Wake Forest is probably their best win, and that was kind of a close game. I'm not that high on Clemson this year. They're going to sneak in because they're going to finish undefeated. They're going to be a conference champion, and they have the brand recognition. But if TCU wins out and wins the Big 12, right? Because the SEC is getting 2 spots. We know that. Whether between Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, they might actually get 3. SEC realistically,
I don't think they'll do it though. They won't give a 2-loss team. They won't put a 2-loss team in.
But there's not. Here's the thing. Okay, so Tennessee beats Georgia this week, and then loses to Alabama in the SEC championship. You have 1 loss Alabama with a loss to Tennessee, 1 loss Tennessee with a loss to Georgia, and 1 loss Georgia with a loss to Alabama. I think I got that right.
But won't 2 of them end up playing in the SEC championship?
If it's Alabama and Georgia, They don't play in the regular season.
Oh, right. Okay.
So if Alabama beats Georgia, Georgia beats Tennessee, Tennessee beats Alabama, they're all one-loss teams.
Okay.
It could happen. Let's say it's
be...
in that case, it's those three in Ohio State, because Ohio State's going to beat Michigan and win the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But let's say Alabama loses 2 games, which I think could happen. Hurts me, but I think it could happen.
Yeah.
If TCU wins out and wins the Big 12, I think a one-loss TCU team is better than an undefeated Clemson team from a weak ACC. I really do. I really do believe that.
I agree.
A lot's got to happen, and that's not even getting into the Pac-12, because I think one-loss USC or one-loss Oregon has a real case as well, especially one-loss Oregon.
I would love to see one of those guys in us. I focus so heavily in my college football fandom on quarterbacks, and so to see and I don't like DJ at Clemson, so to see 4 of Hendon Hooker, CJ Stroud, get Stetson Bennett out of my face, get Georgia out of there, lose a game, and just get it. I like Stetson Bennett. His story was awesome last year. Him being drunk on GMA was the funniest thing ever the next morning. But I want good quarterbacks. I want Bryce Young. I want Caleb Williams. Bo Nix, I guess.
Come on. You're going to give this speech. You're not going to mention the quarterback of the number 1 team in the nation?
Oh, Hendon Hooker. Did I say
it?
Did
give me Hendon
it?
Hooker in the college football playoff.
I thought I said it. Yeah, I agree.
Give me what I really want. What I really, really want is Tennessee, Alabama in the college football playoff. Yeah. That is the best possible. Look, or in the SEC championship, it would be fun.
Right.
But like you, I'm done with Georgia. I'm over it. They won the title last year. It was nice. Good for Kirby. Whatever. I'm over it.
Me too.
Give me Bryce and Hendon Hooker in the SEC championship. It'll be like Tua and Burrow from 2019 all over again, right? That was the last game of the century, by the way, before this week. I love it. That's what I want to see. And I'll say this too. Sorry, I know you want to talk. Let me just get this one more in.
No, you're good. Keep going. I don't have much.
For the people who say I don't like college football because it's always the same teams, this is your week to watch, because you may think it's always the same teams. You know what isn't ever? You know what hasn't been since the 90s is Tennessee. Tennessee showing up would be massive. Rocky Top, baby. I'm on the bandwagon. They beat my Crimson Tide. I don't care. I'm on the bandwagon. That team is fun as hell.
It's fun. It's like you said, it's different. I got a buddy who is like, he hates college football, and we're like, watch the games. It's fun. And when you get a team like Tennessee every couple years, you get a team like LSU, which from 2 years ago, right? They're not really a powerhouse like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State are. LSU is kind of back and forth. So to see them with Joe Burrow a few years ago, to see Tennessee with Hooker now, it's good stuff. I'm just taking a look at the rest of the top 25. Any surprises on your end? Texas is still ranked, which is interesting.
Yeah, the Texas.
I know. TCU, I'd love to see them get in. The Utes, okay. UNC. I mean, Tulane at 19 is interesting. I'm not sure what their record is, but that's a...
So I'll tell you that here's the interesting thing I've done the last couple of weeks, and we can do it for real now. So when there is the 12-team playoff, right? People hate on the 12-team playoff. What would a 12-team playoff look like hypothetically this year? They're not going to have it this year. They obviously wouldn't have it with this poll. The season's not over. I wish my phone would load. But what would the matchups be if they were to play a playoff this year? So you would have, because the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference champion gets in. I'm just going to use the highest ranked non-Power 5 team here as placeholder. Yep. You'd have Tulane at Michigan, which is, who cares? And at Michigan, these are first rounders on campus.
Yep.
Ole Miss at Alabama in a playoff game. LSU at TCU, which is a sneaky good game.
Yeah.
And then USC and then USC at Oregon.
Ooh.
We need that 12-team playoff.
That's legit. I can't wait for it.
Now.
I'm sick of 4 teams. Yeah.
And then the top 4 teams get buys and they go right to the bowl games. But it won't end like that. It wouldn't realistically end like that. Michigan and Ohio State won't both finish in the top 4 in any year, just the way the games are scheduled. But yeah, man, I'm ready. I'm ready for that 12-team playoff. Bring it on.
Yeah, it's coming. We'll continue doing these college football minutes as again, it's good to see, and it's like it really shows you where the committee stands when these officially come out. I always look forward to these on Tuesday nights. So We'll get to talk about these a little bit more as the season goes on, but that's college football for now. Back to our old Patriots beat background. Me and Alex get to chop it up about other things, but we're here to talk to you guys about the Patriots. So that's that for Patriots beat tonight. We will be back on Thursday. The Colts come into town on Sunday to take on the Patriots. So we will break down that game. We will preview that on Tuesday or Thursday rather, probably at 7, and then we'll be back next week to do some breakdown. And we'll keep this train rolling as the Patriots head into the bye after that. But for now, he's Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub. Follow him on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Read him on thesportshub.com. You can catch all my stuff at CLNSmedia.com and follow me on Twitter at Mike Kadlick. Until Thursday, again, thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you then.